Well, welcome back to the Redeem Her Time podcast. We are going to have a great conversation today around something that I often say is very parallel to our time, and that is our money, right? I mean, scripture talks so often about how we are tending the resources that we have, and time and money both fit into that category. And so today, I have a very special friend. And also client of mine, Danielle Foxx, who's going to be sharing with us about how to reduce bookkeeping overwhelm through consistent routines as good stewards of what we've been entrusted, right? So even though it's about money, it has everything to do with time. And if you are in business, then bookkeeping is something that needs to be getting some time, or you need to find someone like Danielle who can do this for you. So this is a timely conversation that you're going to want to lean into. So Danielle, welcome to the Redeeming Her Time podcast. You're not a stranger around here. You've been here before and a part of our community. And so I'm excited to welcome you back and just want to ask you to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about what life is holding in this season outside of the work that you do.
Hi, Lisa. Thank you so much for having me here today. I really appreciate it. And so, life right now, lots of different things. I have adult children, and two of them are out of school on their own. My oldest is married. I have one grandchild who is just the sweetest little thing. Of course, I could brag on her forever. And then my middle had just started his full-time career this year, and my daughter is in her junior year at college. So, in addition to the business that I have, that I'm growing in God's strength and purpose, I also work full time as well. And then, I'm involved. My husband is preaching at the church that we're involved in right now. So there's a lot of roles there that I've kind of fallen into as he's the interim pastor for right now. And so there's a lot going on that I'm juggling in this season of life.
I love it. I remember you saying like the work that we've done together is helping you to organize your employment, your entrepreneurship, and your everything else. I love a good alliteration. So that's always stuck with me because yes, I mean it doesn't matter if we're full-time in our business or we've got another career or just like you said, these other roles in our life. There are a lot of things and they can be really good things. And here is where this what God has called us to in this season. We want to be faithful stewards of it, which I know is really on your heart. So tell us a little bit more about the work you do in your business, and how God has called you to serve others through that.
Great. I love to work with, my passion is working with startup entrepreneurs, especially those who are faith-led entrepreneurs, because the work that I do while I'm working with bookkeeping is also very structured around stewardship. And we have those conversations about what stewardship looks like for their business and for them personally. And so I have several different ways that I can work with my clients. I can come in and provide done for you services where they can hire it out to me. I can just handle it for them. Or I can be a bookkeeping coach and I can come alongside them as they're doing it, more of a done with you type of option. And then I also provide resources, have a mini course that follows the steward framework. And entrepreneurs can go through that course and they can kind of learn on their own some of these principles that I teach when I'm working with my clients one-on-one. So there are a lot of different ways that I work with clients, but it's all focused around the bookkeeping tasks for the business. That is what I do. I help to come in and reduce the bookkeeping overwhelm, whether I'm providing that service or working with the entrepreneur so that they can reduce the overwhelm and be more use their time better and their finances better themselves.
I love it. I love it. And we're going to dive more into your steward framework and things like that in a little bit. But here's what I love that you're not just about the numbers, you're about what's behind the numbers, right? The heart behind it. And as I often say, it's not just about your calendar, it's about your heart. And you're showing people it's not just about, what's in your account, it's about, this resource that God has given you and what you're doing with it. So maybe just kind of fill us in, like, why are you so passionate about that generosity and stewardship side of things? Maybe where did you see this lacking, and really feel like, this is something I want to start speaking into. So I'm not just doing people's books, but I'm really helping them to make a bigger impact through the resources that they bring in their business.
Absolutely. A couple of years ago, I really felt I guess, empty at both my full-time job and my in my business. And I couldn't really figure out why. I love what I do. I've never wanted to do anything professionally other than accounting. I've been working in the field since high school. And so I couldn't understand why all of a sudden was I just feeling this empty, like there was no purpose behind what I was doing. And so I kind of took a quarter and set that aside and really did some deep dive into scripture, um, as far as money things and business purpose and from a faith perspective. And this, was an impetus of being in your program and really talking about how things are all, the 8 areas of intention all come out of that center. That's faith. And so during that time, I really felt like God was showing me that, helping somebody do their books just so that they can amass a lot of money so that they can retire and, go, live the good life on their boat. That's not really what our purpose as Christians should be. And so I really started leaning into how can I work with my clients, especially faith-led clients, to really pull that faith piece into their business and really consider how does God want us to steward these finances that he's allowing to flow through us because he has a purpose for them. We think so much about, 10% is God's and 90% is ours, but really God owns it all. Scriptures say that in many different places that he owns everything. And so anything he allows to flow through us needs to be stewarded well. And so he kind of started working in my heart, personally in my business. I realized I had not been doing that the way that I should be doing. And so that changed. I also read a book by Randy Alcorn, and there was a statement in that book that really was a gut punch to me. And in that book, it's called Giving is the Good Life. And he said, when stewards become confused about who owns the assets that they're stewarding, they become embezzlers. And that just really, I was like, am I embezzling money from God? Like how, like that really started a whole different thinking process. And so all of that led to kind of a shift in, still providing the same bookkeeping services, but really pulling in that foundational piece, which it has to be surrendering ownership. That's the foundation. And realizing we are stewards of the money that's flowing through us from God. And the bookkeeping is simply the tool that we use to be able to direct those finances with intention according to the purposes that he is calling us as individual business owners, because it's going to be different for each of us, the purpose that he has. But in 1 Timothy 6:17 through 19, it talks about those who have money, like those that have the money that God is blessing them with. What are they supposed to do? They're supposed to be rich in good works, generous, ready to share. And why? Because it's the treasure that is setting up our foundation for the future. And so that we can take hold of that which is truly life. And I thought about that and I'm like, I not only do I want to be taking hold of life that is really life, but I want to help my clients do the same thing.
Yeah, I love this. I love your journey. I love how the Lord just, really helped you see something that already you were good at, you were attracted to, you were doing, and really showed you how it tied into the faith element. And like you said, everything that we do has faith at the center and everything comes out of there. And in what you were just sharing about it flowing through us, I don't know where I read this, but I read it somewhere recently that we are not called to be cul-de-sacs. We are called to be conduits, right? And what a difference there is when it's not just I'm here to accumulate all of these things, but it's just flowing through me, right? And here is where I think we experience the true abundance, both in the material things and the immaterial, right? More than that, more in that area, because that's how the kingdom works, right? And so I love your journey of this and how you started, working on this in your own life, and then are starting to teach other people about it. And I want to talk about that, in just a minute. But before we go into that, I would love for you just to share a little bit about your CEO journey. We've been working together for a couple of years. And not only, rightly ordering your calendar, so on the time side of things, but also rightly ordering your heart and really getting clear on what it is that God has called you to. So, like maybe just take us a little bit real quick on that journey of where you were before we started working together and what things maybe you had tried, what your struggles were, and how things are different even in the place where you're sitting now.
It's hugely different. It's made such a huge impact, and hopefully, I'm not going to get emotional because I usually do.
Oh.
But as you talk about the employment and the entrepreneurship and the everything else, trying to juggle all that, I was a mess. I felt like the hamster on the hamster wheel that is always trying to spit, like running and running and running, but never getting anywhere. I love a color-coded planner. I love all the markers and all the office supplies. And so, I had tried multiple different planners, like, well, if I can just time block better and if I can color code it, so I know that this is entrepreneurship and this is employment and this is everything else. And I have a color for everything, and then it's just going to work. And it never did. And every year it was a new planner and it was a new attempt to try. And I just kept feeling that overwhelm, that constant chaos. Life just felt constantly chaotic.
Mm.
And I actually started working with you. I came across like a little mini course that you were offering. And I said, okay, well, here's planning with the faith aspect. That's what I need. So, I jumped into that, and then it's kind of, I've also been with you along your journey as your business has kind of shifted and grown. And so it's working with you and really realizing it wasn't the calendar, it wasn't the planner.
Mm.
And plug for your planner, it's amazing and everybody should have one. But um, it's even with purchasing your planner, without that heart at the center, without realizing that your heart has to change about how you're looking at time. How are you stewarding your time? And I love that you pull that in because I have the stewardship of finances. You're talking about the stewardship of time, and they really are so well aligned in how we have to, how they both come back to the heart. And so now, that's not that there aren't times that are overwhelming or there are times that there's more on my calendar than at other times, but I have that solid foundation, that faith piece, and the different tools that you've created and implemented and taught us through the program, um, that just make the difference in being able to juggle all those things. And I feel be far more successful in each area instead of just dropping one thing or dropping something else. I'm able to balance those things successfully because I have the tools to be able to do that.
Yes, I love it. And what I've seen in your journey, Danielle, is not just like, okay, I feel better about my time. I don't feel as chaotic and scattered and things like that, but it's opened up this like clarity for you. It's opened up this creativity in you. It's like, because I think like when you came to me, and so many of us are in this place, so I'm sure so many listeners can relate. We're just in like more in survival mode. Like I'm just trying to get through the day. I'm trying to get through the week. I'm trying to get through the month or the year or whatever, and hopefully come out in the green or the black, not the red, I guess in your case, right? And we're just in that mode. And it's just like all we can see is all we can see. And it's like we have these blinders on and it's just in front of us. And what I've watched you do is like as you have, really started to surrender your time and let go of that control that we all, want to grip so tightly to out of good, reason of trying to be, intentional with it. You've had created the space to really just like be with the Lord. I know that's been a really big thing for you is just having that daily meeting with God and making that time, a priority and then letting that have a ripple effect into, how you do what you're doing. And then also some of these extra things that God's put on your heart to really kind of take it beyond just the bookkeeping, and all of that, right? You're going beyond the spreadsheet, you're getting into the heart. So, I want to talk about this idea of stewardship and generosity that you talk about. Okay. And like you said, there's so many parallels between time and money. And I quote you all the time with that Randy Elkhorn quote as well about becoming an embezzler. So let's talk about what stewardship truly is, right? So we don't want to end up on the side of like I'm acting like I own it all, right? Stewardship means that we need to know our numbers and that we don't own it, and we need to be wise with how we spend and invest it. So, share with me just like let's kind of talk about like what does stewardship really mean and why is this something that maybe a lot of business owners, even faith-led business owners, are really maybe not thinking about, or we're just kind of pulled in by the way that the world is chasing numbers and approaching this area of business.
That's a great question and a great topic to talk about. From stewardship standpoint, I think when you talk about the way that the world looks at things, you get here a lot of, hey, do you want to hit six figures? Do you want to hit, multi-million dollar business? Do you want to be this? Do you want to be that? And we get really excited about that. We think like, I mean, who doesn't want to be like have more money, And so we get really excited about that. And oh, this thing is going to help me hit six figures, or this thing is going to help me do the next thing. And I think we get caught up in that mentality and we forget the why. Like, why do we want to hit six figures? Why do we want to, have more financially? Is it because we want a boat or a house and none of those things are wrong. I'm not saying that they're wrong, that, being able to go on vacation with your family or have those moments and those memories, all really excellent things. But is that, when we come back to scripture, is scripture saying that the money that we receive is for things, temporary things here in this world? Or is there a greater purpose behind that? And I think for a lot of business owners, we just get caught up. I did. I was caught up in it. I want more money. I want to be able to do this, but there was no purpose behind it. And so I think it's really important, when we're looking at our books, when we're trying to, determine what that next goal is. When I work with clients, we try to kind of flip the script on that and we say, what is your generosity goal? How do you want to impact the kingdom with your business? And I've kind of created a spreadsheet that I can take clients through and we can plug in where they are now and where they want to be. And then we can say, okay, if this is your kingdom impact goal, then what is your revenue goal that you need to hit in order to make that happen? Assuming, all of your expenses and things that are going to happen, and what would you need in revenue in order to be able to have that kingdom impact that God is calling you to have? And so we're just kind of flipping that script and having conversations where our kingdom purpose is the driver of the revenue goals. And we need to have revenue goals. We don't want to be staying stagnant. We don't want to stay where we are. God might have us in waiting times. He might have us in growing times. Um, he might be working, as you've been talking about recently, on who we are becoming
Mhm.
rather than what we're doing. But even in those times, he's still preparing us for that growth that's going to happen as we continue to serve him. And so having that foundational from the very beginning, as I mentioned, I love to work with startups. And so we might not be talking about, hey, we're going to hit six figures next year, but we might be saying like, okay, next year you want to be able to support some nonprofit organization that's sharing the gospel. And maybe it's only $500 next year. That we get caught up in that generosity is a dollar value and that we have to, unless we can give six figures, we're not generous.
Yeah.
But generosity is a heart. It's just like everything else. It comes back to the heart. What is God calling you to do? And are you being obedient? Are you taking that next obedient step? And so even startups, I believe, can be generous businesses because if they start with that foundation of the kingdom impact that God is calling them to have is their priority, and then all of their financial strategy supports that. It's just a huge change in how you look at your business and how you operate your business as a faith-led business owner.
Yeah, and it's just like, I mean, what Jesus did in the kingdom, right? He came and he said, "You've heard it said this, and I'm turning this upside down." And think about like, the story he told about the widow, the poor widow that just had, just so little and gave, and yet the Pharisee, who had so much and gave his little bit. And it's not about as much about the number, it's about the heart behind it and the understanding of the stewardship, which is what I love that you dive into. And here's what I'm hearing is that when we're focusing on the profit, then the generosity piece kind of becomes an afterthought. Like if I have leftover, if I hit my goals, then I will, that kind of thing. And what I hear you saying is like you're helping people think beyond to like make the generosity part of the plan and the reason why they are hitting these profit goals. So that way there's a bigger purpose behind, I'm not just trying to, hit these numbers, but like it's because I want to make this kind of impact, right? Like, how does that now start having a ripple effect, obviously in our business, but even into other areas of our life? Like, what difference would that make if we are approaching our bookkeeping not as the stressed out, like, how much do I owe the IRS? Or, like, did I actually like, get everything in my spreadsheet that I needed to? Because I think that's where a lot of us live, but into it being really something that is joyful and leading to a lot of fruitfulness for the kingdom.
Absolutely. And I completely believe that when we start to see bookkeeping as a tool for our stewardship, it's
Mm.
going to change everything because it is so easy to be like, most business owners, bookkeeping is not their thing. That's not why they got into business. They didn't get into business so they could sit behind a desk and track numbers all day long. They got into business because God was calling them to have an impact in their customers' lives in some particular way. And usually it's not because they're sitting doing numbers. And so for most business owners, bookkeeping is kind of a dreaded task. And we do tie it to the tax return. Well, I have to do my bookkeeping because at the end of the year I have to file this tax return. And nobody wants to file a tax return. It's a negative connotation in most of our minds. And so when we associate bookkeeping with that, we're like, oh, I have to do bookkeeping. But what happens is when we procrastinate that bookkeeping, then we get to the end of the year and one, we're not able to make the most of our time because now we're trying to scramble and we're trying to find this and we're trying to find that and where's that information and so we're not getting the best return on our time,
Yeah.
but we're also mentally we're our minds are chaos and our books are chaos and everything is just feels overwhelming. Well, that overwhelm just leads to it perpetuates the cycle. Okay, we procrastinated, now we feel overwhelmed. Well, now that overwhelm is a negative feeling, so we procrastinate again to avoid it, and then we get, the cycle just keeps going. But I think when we really see bookkeeping as a tool that helps us direct those finances, that God is generously and loving and graciously allowing to come through our business when we see it as a way to express our gratitude for all that he is doing for us through this business he's given us, when we use it as a tool to support the directing of the finances and the achieving of God's purposes, it changes how we feel about it. Instead of having that icky, yucky feeling, now we're like, okay, I'm almost, I can't quite promise, but you might get to the end of the month and be excited to sit down and go through those numbers because you get to, as your books are telling a story and they're
Mm.
telling a story of God's provision and
Mm.
his amazing grace and abundance and maybe you don't feel like it's abundance yet. Maybe you're a startup and you're not seeing like the numbers that you would want, but you're still seeing his provision. He met that need that you had through the business that he's given you. And so our perspective shifts. And when our perspective shifts and we start to see bookkeeping as a tool, then we can help to reduce that overwhelm, reduce that procrastination because now it's kind of an exciting opportunity to sit down with our books every month.
How amazing would that be, you guys, to like be like, oh, it's the time of the month that I get to sit down and look at this, right? Because you've already got some things in place so that it's not this surprise or it's not this like emergency, when you're coming up against a deadline. But I love this. Like it actually like looking at it as this, story of how God is providing and how he is multiplying your impact through the work that you're doing. So I love this. So let's talk a little bit about how do we reduce this bookkeeping overwhelm? How do we create some consistent routines from this place of stewardship so that we, not only are, making profits in our business, but we're also really able to hit those generosity goals that we have. Maybe, we're always here about like what can I do how can I invest time in this area to get a good ROTI, a good return on time invested. So what would be a couple of things that you would share with us as like practical steps to start moving in that direction, no matter how we're feeling about it right now?
Sure. I have three three top tips that I usually share with business owners. And the first one is surrendering ownership and truly understanding your role as steward. Get into scriptures, do some study, see what God has to say about money. You know, the gratitude piece of what is flowing through your business and understanding it's all because God is allowing that. And so really that's foundational to having that shift and really starting down that road. Um, Practical steps. First, I would say find a system.
Mm.
Any system you use is better than the greatest, most wonderful system that you never touch. So if
So
it's
true.
paper, if it's a spreadsheet, if it is accounting software, whatever you know that you will consistently use um, on a regular basis, that's the system that you need to be using because again, if you're not using it, you can have the most wonderful system created, but if you're never touching it, it's not benefiting you. So sit down and really determine which method is going to be the best method for you as a business owner to keep track of your finances. And then the third thing would be to establish those consistent rhythms. Um, when you leave all the tasks again until the last minute, that's when the overwhelm happens. That's when the chaos happens. It contributes to further procrastination. So if you can create those rhythms, whether it's weekly, whether it's monthly, there are some tasks that are going to be weekly, some will be monthly, some will be quarterly. I recommend at least monthly. If you only have a few transactions and you're like, it's really not, I really don't get return on time by having this, weekly time that I set aside that it ends up not being as productive as I would like, then at least do it monthly. But regular review of your books throughout the year is going to allow you to be able to direct your finances with intention. If you leave it all until the end of the year, it's really hard to make those intentional decisions if you don't know what's happened and where you are and where you're going.
Yes, so true, right? And we talk about like when things have regularity to them or should have regularity to them, then we don't get stressed. They don't become tyranny of the urgent, right? Something that's now dictating our time or where our money is going because we're in a crunch, we're in a crisis, and we have to just make it happen. So I love like, yes, every single person listening should have some kind of an intentional system with some kind of regularity, so that you are paying attention to this area of your business and then things don't sneak up on you as quickly and you're able to take care of them closer to when in the moment as possible. So I love this. We all know, like on here we talk about like stewarding our time makes all the difference in our ROTI, our return on time invested. But how does stewarding our finances and business affect our time and our ROTI? What's the connection there, especially as you're working with business owners, and seeing how much time maybe they're not putting into their business and how it affects them in this area, or like the amount of time it ends up costing them if they're not doing these things.
Yes, definitely the amount of time that it's costing them if
Mhm.
they are not having those consistent rhythms because when you're scrambling at the end of the year and you're like, oh wait, I have to get all of this to my, tax preparer, or if it's you and you're preparing your own taxes and you're trying to gather all this information at the last minute, it's easy to miss things. It's easy to just feel that overwhelm and feel that sense of anxiety that isn't necessary if you have those consistent rhythms. And then also it's really easy to miss information. If your data is not as accurate, if you're recording it 12 months after the transaction happened, you might be like, why did I pay that bill? Who was that I paid? And so it's really you're really going to get the best return on your time when you have those consistent rhythms and when you're spending that time on a regular basis versus waiting till the end. I've done it before where I was so focused on my full-time job and on serving all my clients that I didn't even look at my books until 2 weeks before the tax return was due. And I've experienced that anxiety and that stress, and I know I know the data that I need to gather, but I've gone through like, what was that payment? I mean, I've been there, I've done it. And so, and it's not the best use of your time when you sit down and you're like, it's going to take me 5 hours now. And And it's when your mind is not clear and you're not thinking well, you're not using your time to the best,
Yeah.
to the
We're
best
not
purpose
we're
and
not
to the best
stewarding,
advantage.
right?
Right.
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 Yeah. Because if you truly understood this belonged to someone else, there's an extra level of care and concern that you give to protecting it and expanding it, and you're not just letting it sit around collecting dust. So I love this. What would be one piece of encouragement that you would give to a woman listening who's like, okay, Danielle, I'm kind of struggling. I haven't been giving much time to my finances. Yeah, I'm probably more like that where you just described, where it's the stress and anxiety coming up, once I hit a timeline or a deadline or things like that. What would be just one thing that will help her to take a step forward?
I would recommend creating a recurring appointment on your calendar for those bookkeeping activities and then batch the activities as much as possible. So if you know that once a month you're going to have to send out all your client invoices, well, that would also be a good time when you put that appointment on your calendar. I know that I need to do it on this day. Build in enough time in that appointment that you can also review your expenses for the month and get them recorded. And
Mm.
so when you start batching those things that need the attention on an ongoing basis, then you'll be able to maintain that consistency and start, really making intentional, purposeful decisions about your finances because you're looking at them intentionally every month. And I just think having that recurring appointment on your calendar, for me, if I see it on my calendar and I know, and when I'm previewing my week and I see, okay, my finance time slots on, okay, what do I need to do? And so I think it just helps us stay focused and stay on track when we have that recurring appointment on our calendar. Just like you had an appointment with a client or someone else, just treat it that same way. Know that when that last day of the month, or the third Friday of the month, or make it fun, call it Finance Friday, or come up with some little thing. And then I know we talk about in your program, Lissa, when we've achieved a goal, having that reward at the end. Maybe, hey, if you're consistent with your books every month for 3 months, that you give yourself some kind of little reward. You take some money out of the business for and go get a coffee or whatever
Yeah.
it is. But having that, give yourself that positive reinforcement so that you feel good about the books rather than feeling yucky about the books. So
I love it. I love it. Because when we take something like this and do what you just told us to do, which is so brilliant, right? Like make a regular appointment, decide the frequency that you want to do it. Now I'm not stressing out in the in-between times because I know that it already has a time set aside. And then when that time comes, I know what it's time for, right? Because, okay, this matters. And I've got hopefully a system that I'm going to work through when I sit down to it. So I'm not just, going, what do I do now? And then we won't have that angst about it, and we won't be tempted to keep kicking the can down the road or feeling guilty about what we're not doing. So I love this, and I love how tangible it is. And I mean, there's always an option too of find someone like Danielle, reach out to Danielle, and she can do a lot of this with you or for you. And whether it's helping you with the generosity side of things or whether it's actually doing the bookkeeping or both. As business owners, we only still have get 24 hours in a day. And so we have to decide, right, is this something that I'm the only person who can do right now? And if so, then I got to, figure out these systems and, create a schedule and all of that. But is this something I can delegate? Is this something I can hire out? Is this something that I can get some support around that's going to free up my time and bandwidth for the things that only I can do? So Danielle's a great resource. And Danielle, I know we could talk all day because like you said, you've been doing this since high school. That's amazing. I'm so glad you love it because we need people like you who love the number piece of things for those of us who don't naturally go that way. So tell us, like, what resources or support do you have to offer? What would be a good next step for someone listening who wants to, number one, start, creating some systems and schedules around this, but also start moving towards that generosity plan and not just focusing on how am I gonna, pay my bills this month?
sure. Well, with the podcast here today, there is a free resource, which is a 14-day devotional, and it's called Exchanging Ownership for Stewardship. And it's really a journey through several scriptures that have to do with finances, have to do with the purposes that God has behind the finances that He is allowing to flow through us. And it helps to give that solid foundation because I do believe it comes back to that. We really truly have to understand our role as stewards, and then see bookkeeping as the tool that supports our stewardship before we're really going to have a change in perspective, where before we're really going to be able to reduce that overwhelm and stop that procrastination. So we will have that available through the podcast today. But also I have several other resources on my website. So if they go to 4faccounting.net, number 4 letter F accounting.net, I do have some additional resources there, creating a gift plan, just some tips to help you get started. And then also, there's a resource, 10 bookkeeping tips for incorporating generosity into your business. And so that also is just some ways that you can make this happen in a practical way. Just some small steps that you can implement. You know, you can pick one or pick all 10 and just start to really bring that generosity piece into your bookkeeping.
I love this. It starts with the heart. So right now, go to the show notes, go grab that 14-day devotional. I have a feeling when you start doing the heart work first, then the actual tangible, like I have to look at my books, isn't going to feel so scary. It's actually going to be something that you see as faithful stewardship. And then you've got some great tools that you can access through Danielle. And Danielle has been an active part of the Redeemer Time community for many years. Like actually, since it started, Danielle has been an active member. And so I'm inviting everyone listening to come into the community. If you're not already a member, I don't know what you're waiting for because we're over there talking about the things that actually doing the things we talk about in the podcast. I should say it that way. So if you're not a member yet, go to redeemhertime.com/community. I'll drop that link in the show notes as well. Come over inside. This would be a great place to connect and network with other Christian faith-led women who are doing business. Also, Danielle is going to be there to be able to answer questions and to share some additional resources and things like that. So you've got a great opportunity to, maybe kind of get some more clarity around what you need to actually be focusing on next and how you can get support. So come and join us over there, and we're going to actually, steward, right, what God has given us, whether it's our time or whether it's our finances, and really see how that produces fruitfulness. So thank you so much, Danielle, for being with us today. I always love getting to hang out with you and, and getting to see your journey and how you're growing and how you're helping others to really see numbers in a whole different way. So I always love to end with this personal question. We're recording this, it's fall, we're heading into the holidays and the end of 2025. So what is it time for in this season of either your life or business? And what kind of roadie are you expectant for? What kind of results on that time are you wanting to see God bring?
I think right now it is time for small, consistent steps of obedience and contentment in the journey. It's really easy to get caught up in the places that we want to be and the places that we know that God is leading us, but we're not quite there yet. And so, it's really time in my life personally to just take those small daily steps of obedience that He is calling me toward as I operate the business that He's given me, but also exist as an employee, and just being content in the journey where He has me right now, and not, taking the steps toward getting where He's calling me to be, but being content where He has me right now.
Yeah, it's this balance, right? Where we are present where we are, right? But with an eye to where we feel like He's leading us next. And we're doing our faithful parts, trusting Him with the timing of it all. And so I love your example of walking that journey. So thank you so much for sharing with us today. Thanks everyone for joining us. If you know another Christian woman in business who needs to be thinking about her time or her money, then share this episode with her. I have a feeling it's going to shift some things in her heart as well, and would love to invite her into some of these resources and conversations. So, all right, we'll see you guys next time.